In 1957, a 36-year-old woman climbed into the mountains of eastern Cuba. Behind her, 12 men with rifles. In front of her, a country ruled by a dictator. History remembers the men. The men called her the boss. Her name was Celia Sánchez, and the Cuban Revolution would not have existed without her. To understand why this matters, look at Cuba in 1952. The country was 90 miles from Miami and ran like an American backyard. The casinos were owned by the mob. The sugar was owned by U.S. corporations. The president, Fulgencio Batista, had just taken power in a military coup. In the 1950s, 20,000 Cubans were murdered under Batista's rule. Anyone who opposed him disappeared. In a small town called Media Luna, a doctor's daughter watched all of it. She was quiet, polite, spoke softly. The kind of woman a dictatorship never thinks to fear. That was their mistake. Celia Sánchez grew up rich by Cuban standards. Her father was a doctor. She was one of 8 children. She was well educated, but never went to university. What she had instead was a network. For years, she'd raised money for poor children in her town. She built a community of farmers and families bound by trust, a Catholic charity, technically, but really a web. When Fidel Castro's first uprising failed in 1953, when his men were killed or imprisoned, that network was still there, waiting. And when Castro tried again in 1956, sailing from Mexico on a small boat called Granma, only one person in Cuba was organized enough to receive him. It wasn't a general, it wasn't a politician, it was Celia. 2 years later, Batista's secret police almost caught her. She ran into a marabou grove, a forest of thorn bushes, and hid until nightfall. A doctor later pulled 13 thorns out of her skull. She kept running her networks the next day. Because here is what most people don't know about the Cuban Revolution. The men in the mountains would have starved without her. The bullets, the medicine, the food, the new recruits, all of it came through one woman, operating from below, while Castro became famous from above. She didn't follow him into the mountains, he followed her. In July 1957, a man named Frank Pais was shot in the street by Batista's police. He was Celia's closest comrade, the head of the urban underground, the man Castro had trusted to coordinate the cities while he fought in the mountains. 60,000 people came to his funeral, almost half of Santiago. That same evening, while the city was still grieving, Castro sent a single instruction from the Sierra Maestra: Celia takes over. She was 37 years old. She had a price on her head. Half of Cuba's police force was hunting her. She wrote the report for the national office that night. Then she went back to work. Celia chose the landing site for the Granma. She built the peasant militia that protected the rebels in their first weeks. She set up the supply chain that kept them alive for 2 years in the mountains. In October 1957, she finally joined the rebels in the Sierra Maestra herself. She would later call it the best time of her life. She became the first woman to fight as a guerrilla in the Sierra. A year later, she helped create the Mariana Grajales Women's Battalion, proving Cuban women could fight on the front lines too. And inside the rebel camp, something quiet was happening. She started keeping copies of everything, every order Castro signed, every letter from every commander, every report from every battle. She filed them in waterproof boxes and buried them in the mountains. She wasn't just fighting a revolution, she was recording it. In 1959, when Batista finally fled and Castro marched into Havana, Celia walked in beside him, carrying the only complete archive of how it had all happened. After the revolution, she could have taken any title she wanted. She didn't. She lived in a small apartment attached to Castro's office. She wore comfortable espadrilles, drove her own Jeep, and refused an escort. Her official title was buried in paperwork, Secretary of the Council of State. But everyone in Cuba knew what she really was. She was the only person Castro listened to without arguing. She built Lenin Park. She created the literacy programs that taught 1 million Cubans to read. She even helped develop the Cohiba cigar brand. She founded the Office of Historical Affairs, the institution that still holds Cuba's revolutionary archives today. Cubans call it El Fondo de Celia, Celia's collection. And then, in 1980, at the age of 60, she died of lung cancer. Castro wept publicly at her funeral. It was one of the only times anyone ever saw him cry. Today, the murals of Cuba are full of bearded men. Castro, Che, Camilo. You can walk through Havana for a week and never see her face. But in the official archives, the ones she built, the ones she saved, the ones she carried out of the mountains, her handwriting is on almost every page. Every revolution is remembered through the people who took the credit, but it is built by the people who took the work. The men got the statues, the woman wrote the history.